I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
I have an opening statement to read regarding the proposed 2017-18 tentative balanced budget. In accordance with section 200.065, chapter 1010 and chapter 1011 Florida statutes, I'm submitting the proposed tentative balanced budget for the 2017-18 year and recommending the millage to be levied. The purpose of today's meeting is to approve the 2017-18 proposed tentative budget and proposed millage for advertising and to set the date, time, and place of the first public hearing on our budget, which would be August 1st, 2017 at 5:05 p.m. here in the school board meeting room. Administration Building, 200 Reed Street, Palatka, Florida, 32177.
Okay. Ms. Odom?
Good afternoon, everyone. You know, we could just say advertise, but I want to talk briefly about the budget and everything and what you're going to have in front of you and what you're approving to advertise. Like the superintendent said, the purpose of today's meeting is to follow the trim guidelines and request approval to advertise the tentative balanced budget in the newspaper. There will actually be 3 documents that you'll be approving to advertise. We will publish a notice of budget hearing so that the general public will be aware of our first public hearing on August 1st at 5:05. We'll publish a notice of school capital tax outlay, and we'll publish a budget summary ad, which is a compression of our entire budget, all funds, into a 1-page document. So I want to talk to you briefly about the documents that will be in the paper. The first is the notice of budget hearing, and it just tells the date and time and that we will be having it. Because we're again proposing a millage rate that is lower than the rollback rate, we do not have to publish a notice of proposed tax increase, which involves a lot more information that you would have to put out there, and we just have to do the notice of budget hearing. I'm going to pass out for you. This is not in the paper. This is just for informational purposes. This is our rollback millage, which we will discuss in greater detail at both public hearings because we're required to by trim guidelines. But the rollback rate, of course, is the millage rate that would bring into the district the exact same amount of funds that we received last year without looking at any type of new construction for the year. Our rollback rate, if you'll look at this, is 6.5795 mils, and our 2017-2018 millage rate is 6.354 mils. That's a reduction of 0.2255 actual mills from last year's rollback rate. And if you'll look at page 2, which will compare the true millage, not the rollback rate, of last year and this year, you'll see that we're doing a reduction of 0.446 mils, and it's all in the required local effort rate. That's almost a ½ mil reduction in millage that we're doing. And again, the legislature...
we have no choice.
You have no choice. The entire reduction is once again attributable to the legislature, lowering our required local effort. And anything we do above these amounts requires going out to the public and asking.
They want
putting it
us.
before.
They want us to locally advertise and raise our own taxes is what they want to do.
And
So
that requires
They don't
a
get blamed
special
for it.
election or in the
already
general
high.
election going before the voters and getting the approval.
Right.
It used to be set at 60% required approval rating. I'm not sure if it still is. I know we tried to do it one time with the 0.25 mils, and that required 60%. I don't know if the regular one does or not.
They will eventually politically lower it enough that you'll have to raise
Have no
taxes
choice.
locally.
And there are a lot of districts
won't.
that are successful in doing so.
St. John's County just
Right. And they have the penny sales tax plus the increased millage. Yes. But if you'll look at the final page of this, in case you get calls, if any public want to know before the public hearing, we are lowering taxes. Other taxing authorities, they'll probably see an increase. We've already heard that the county's raising their millage. I'm pretty certain I heard that St. John's Water Management District is increasing their millage, the county is, and I think St. John's is. We're lowering ours. So for school district taxes, a person that had $100,000 appraised value of the property, if it didn't change in the appraisal value from last year, they'll see a reduction in school taxes of $33.45 this year over what they paid in last year. Now, the second item that's going to be advertised in the paper is this big long one, the notice of tax for school capital outlay. It mentions that we are again proposing the 1.5 mils for capital outlay purposes, and it advertises how we might possibly spend that money that this 1.5 mil generates. This year, it looks different because the document has changed because of the increased requirements needed for sharing our 1.5 mils with our charter schools and their possible usage of the funds received. So this entire section from here to here is the charter school part of it. Overall, this 1.5 mils will bring in $5,477,721 to the district for capital needs. With that, we're funding the maintenance department at $3.3 million. That's the entire cost of everyone and in the maintenance department and all the things that they do to maintain and upkeep our schools. We're providing the schools with the regular discretionary capital maintenance dollars of $400,000, split based on square footage and aging factor, how old their buildings are. We're paying an allowed portion of our property insurance of $506,615. We're also paying the current portion of our master purchase agreement on the buses we purchased, the 17 buses we purchased a few years back. This is the last full year of payments on that, and we've got one more payment in July of next year on that.
Do you recall
And
how much we pay?
how much the entire thing was?
No, not the entire thing, but how much our payments are. We pay monthly, annually?
No, we pay twice a year. Total payment for the year is $351,000.
Thank you.
And we are also now providing the charters a portion of this year due to House Bill 7069 in the amount of $271,625. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit I'm still having a hard time understanding how we can commit public taxpayer dollars to remodel and renovate private property owned by a charter school, but that's the rule that came out of House
What
Bill
was that?
7069.
Total again?
$271,625.17.
You're not the first person to say that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand, it really is. And after all of that, the balance of that $5.4 million is $648,136.06 that can be used by the district for other maintenance, renovation, repair needs. The third and final document that you have in the news for the newspaper advertisement is the budget summary ad, and this is all funds broken down by revenue source and expenditure source. And as you can see from the ad, our current operating budget, which is the general fund first column here, is $92 million. Our overall budget, which includes NEFEC's internal and enterprise funds, is $174.5 million. As the general fund is the main operating fund of the district, I want to call your attention to the general fund column, and we want to discuss that briefly, where the budget ad shows that we have a June 30th. You'll see fund balance net positions. It says July 1, but that's how the year ended and how we begin the year, of $6,508,458.47. This is over $1 million more than we ended last fiscal year with, but there's things within that. Carryover projects, state projects had a balance of over $300,000 more than last year. Our purchase order encumbrances were over $400,000 more than last year. Inventory was pretty much about the same, and everyone listened and tightened their belts, and more rolled back into the general fund by about $300,000 more than last year. I want to pass out. You're all familiar with that sheet. That's the explanation of the general fund balance. So I'll wait till that gets down to you. It shows how that $6.5 million is broken down into the different categories. The project balances within Fund 100, which are state and local projects that have strings attached to them, and we have to spend them according to the statute or the mandate behind them. That's $1,495,180.03. We had a reserve for encumbrances in all projects. That's money's already spoken for, $612,717.53. And I will say this was the reserve only in the general fund. Overall, we had carryover purchase orders over $2.2 million in all funds combined. That's the largest I've seen. People putting on purchase orders throughout the year and they just haven't received the goods or whatever it was they were doing. It hasn't been completed yet, so it's still encumbered at year end.
Hadn't been paid for.
And we have a reserve for inventory. That's not a cash item. That's items already bought and stock on hand of $464,684.46. We, of course, maintain and keep that 3% unreserved fund balance from the 2016-17 budget of $2,378,000, and we had a rollback to the pot, an unreserved cash fund balance of $1,557,823.79. After we've incorporated that total ending fund balance of $6.5 million, that starts our new budget year. Then we add in all the budgeted revenues for the new year, and we subtract out all the expenditures that everyone has put in requests for, allocations earned, everything like that. And you'll see that I'm estimating, you'll see it in two different places. On this form, way down at the bottom, you'll see our fund balances net position. That's a projected amount on June 30, 2016 of $4,568,182.90. And this sheet that you got in your other hand will show how that is broken down, because I budgeted reserves for FP cuts for McKay scholarships of $350,000. Last year they were $323,000. They've been going up every year, and when those McKay scholarships hit, our FEFP is reduced, so we have to budget for it, like we're receiving those funds throughout the year, but when they actually pay those out and it's finalized, then they reduce our future payments by that amount of the McKay scholarships. We've got a reserve for the FTE audit, and what the FTE audit is when, it used to always be Jennifer Taylor, but the two guys, Jane, that came in and were, they were auditing the FEFP, auditing that all the students were riding the buses, that
Yes.
teachers were certified in the right areas, that students had their IEPs and things like that. So I've set aside, I think, $50,000 for that audit adjustment. I've also set aside the best and brightest. I don't know if y'all remember that, but so we've got to pay that money back, $74,304. Just waiting for guidance still from DOE. They know we owe it,
But they don't know how to.
they don't know how to take it
don't know
back. I mean,
what
I can
they're
just cut
doing.
them a check, but they don't want me to do that until they're ready.
It's because they don't know what they're doing.
I'm not gonna say that. But I also did the normal reserves and FTE shortfall in case we don't receive as many students as are projected, a reserve for a possible proration of funds, because let's face it, with what they're saying's coming, it might be that they don't collect as much as they have set aside, so we might be reduced throughout the year. And we have gotten used to a reduction every year, so it's good to have that set aside so that when we get when our FEFT comes in and there's a reduction, I've got a place where I've set it aside and I can reduce it there instead of having to go out to departments and schools and trying to find money to take back away. So after all the budget expenditures and reserves are taken into consideration, here's what we were all hoping for and we were all looking for. Instead of an unreserved fund balance last year was only $5,000 or $6,000, and in prior years it's been $40,000 or $50,000. We have an unreserved fund balance of $777,103.40.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Can I
ma'am.
interrupt, please? I voted no on the budget last year because it was $5,214.
It was
I
very
remember
small.
the amount. It's amazing the work our superintendent has done.
I know.
To get it from that up to
agree.
$750,000
And his
million.
staff.
It's been
And
great
staff.
Staff.
to work
I'd
through
also
it.
like to commend Rhonda because I've worked with her for many, many, many years, and she's very conservative. And what saves us are all these reserved for this and reserved for that, and just
Right.
in case we need it. And then at the end of the year, when we need money for something, and
We've got it.
we've got it,
Yes, ma'am.
even though, and this $750,000 looks better. I want to see one more, 3.6, I want to see one more digit.
I do too,
No,
so
on that.
we'll-
I know
Two more.
that's what she's working
Let me
toward.
echo on that too, Rhonda, if you would. I was waiting on a call from Rhonda this past weekend to see if she was gonna make it all balanced, because we had a couple of options that we were gonna have to cut, you know. So I didn't want to have to do that, but the good news, I mean, we were prepared to do that in our last meeting last week. We all said, hey, you know what? We made a commitment to this fund balance, and we're going to do what we have to do,
Yes.
even if it means tightening the belt some more. So kudos to Rhonda.
Absolutely.
whole team.
And your staff.
Everybody, everybody really pitched in and
Our new superintendent had to jump into the
Oh,
fire.
yeah.
he jumped into the fire in so many ways, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
But,
You got him a
Great job.
baptism.
that,
There you go.
Great job, all.
Baptism
But
baptism.
keep smiling, keep smiling.
smiling, that's all you can do. But with the cuts and with the small amount of additional dollars that we received in the base student allocation, there was a little bit there, we were able to meet our goals of removing the annual overspend. That was over $500,000, expenditures greater than recurring revenues. We were able to provide the automatic steps for our instructional and our classified that went into effect
Oh,
July 1
thank
according to
goodness.
our salary schedules. We were able to set aside some to help offset the effects of House Bill 7069 on our Title I district level needs. So that was $300,000 that we set aside to help out there because they are now limited with the House bill of only having 8% an administrative cost, and our indirect rate that money goes into the general fund is over 7% this year. So we knew we had to help, if we were going to charge the indirect, we had to help them some way, so we set that aside. And we were able to add to our projected year-end fund balance for June 30th, 2018, even greater than the 2/3 of 1% we had estimated. We are at 9/10 of 1%, so I'm projecting financial year-end financial condition ratio of around 4.75. That's the assigned and unassigned fund balance divided by recurring revenue. And in the future, I'd like to see the board entertain a minimum fund balance policy of at least 5 or more percentage points being put into place so that that amount can be protected as we move forward. And with your permission, at a later date, I will seek Neola's guidance and help the next time they come with updates. I know a lot of districts have a fund balance, a minimum fund balance reserve, and see if we can agree on an amount and come up. And if we can't do it right away, at least there will be wording in there that we will continue to do things to work to bring in our fund balance up to that minimum that we established
And
together.
I also want to point out, and it's kudos to the board, this is the first year since what, 07, 08, that we've actually started trending upward
Yes,
in our fund balance, so
yes.
that's
great.
remarkable.
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah.
So at the first public hearing next week, I think it's Tuesday, we can go into greater detail on the budget. You'll see these same handouts again. You'll see a few extra ones. I'll provide a detailed printout, and you'll have a chance to, at that meeting, to amend the budget any way you see fit. We'll also, at that meeting, set a time for the final public hearing on the budget at that meeting. And the last thing, I'm just gonna pass this out, and it's strictly general fund. And I've given you this in the past, so y'all can look at this at your convenience and call or email me or come by if you have any questions or concern. But that takes the general fund budget, and it's broken down into every source of revenue that we receive. And then the expenditures are broken down into salary, benefits, categoricals, charter school share, operational costs, departmental budgets, the initiatives that we as a district have, and it all shows their percentage, the percentage cost that they use of our entire budget of recurring revenues. And really, as today's meeting is really only to seek permission to advertise the proposed budget that will be presented at the first public hearing, I'm seeking your approval to place the 3 documents that we talked about into the Palatka Daily News to be published on Saturday.
Superintendent?
Okay, this time we'll call the roll, and if you would, just indicate whether or not to advertise. So we'll begin with District 1,
Advertise.
District 2,
Advertise.
District 3,
Advertise.
District 4,
Advertise.
District 5.
Advertise.
All right, does anybody have any questions at the current time about the budget? And we've got one more thing I want to discuss briefly, but I want to finalize
Well,
the
I don't
budget
have a
piece.
question, but you are so smart. I know you were trained to do this, but it just baffles me how y'all.
Well, you wouldn't want a finance director that
Well,
was.
I know, but I just appreciate what she does so much.
I appreciate it.
But they
It
told
takes,
us at
you know,
that training, she was president of the,
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, the whole shooting match.
yeah.
Yeah,
so that
they
tells
pay
you
for her to
something
go to the
big.
conference.
Yeah.
That's how valuable she is.
Well, thank you, I appreciate
I have a
that.
question, Rhonda, and I just jotted it down, doesn't mean much, but I'm scanning this notice of tax for school capital outlay, and I saw a purchase of vehicles to transport students, and I'm thinking, well, where does the money for all our other vehicles come from? But then I realized that's just charter schools. So is this one way we have it up on them, that we can use our capital A, this money for our regular fleet as well as our buses?
Yes.
And they can't, they can only
Only
use it on
use it
buses.
that's correct.
Pretty cool. I'd like to see one being in our favor.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I had a quick question about, I know that the 21st Century Grant was something that we were trying to get, and I don't see it. Is it listed? Did we get it? Did we not get it?
Well, the 21st Century Grant wouldn't be in the general fund, it would be a special revenue, but I haven't seen it yet. On the special revenue, mainly that's carryover grants, because those project award
Okay.
letters usually come in after the time of our budget, and you'll see them as budget revisions every time we get a special revenue grant. But
I will say-
I have not seen anything on the 21st Century Grant.
Dr. Coleman is attending a conference. Don't know, Deborah, I don't know if you can tell me the date, but supposed to find out some more information about whether or not we're gonna be approved for that. It's,
I don't know the dates on Dr.
Right.
Coleman's conference.
I don't wanna say officially, but it's looking good. So we
Oh,
will let
okay.
you know as soon as we get official word, but
And the other thing is, now that we have 3 schools in the lowest 300, did you have to increase? I see it's 223,000.
That's how much they've currently got. They do a placeholder every year for the lowest 300, and they do a placeholder for school recognition funds, because at the time of the budget, they do not know what schools are going to make it at the
Right.
time they give us all this information. So probably within the second or third calculation, they will give us, since that's based on last year's dollars and we only had 2 schools in the lowest
Okay.
300, I've divided out that amount between the 3 schools based on FTE. They already have it in their budgets and know how much it is. And I've told them that at a later date, if more funds are forthcoming, they will get that too. But that's
Okay.
based on, that's the exact amount we got last year. That's a couple of the categoricals that they just put a placeholder amount in until they have all their ducks in a row and can tell us exactly how
this-
much we're getting.
The state does give us, it doesn't have to come out of the general fund for that?
It comes out of the SAI fund, the
Okay.
SAI revenue code that comes into the general fund. They
Okay.
tell us how much of that we have to use for the lowest 300.
And we don't ever have to use more than that out of general fund to help with that?
We have not.
Okay, so that's a pretty good estimate. If the more comes through, it would be on that
'Cause,
line item.
Now, the other area is not my expertise, but they usually have enough minutes built in that they haven't been having to pay for the additional hour of reading instruction.
okay.
So they've been able to use it to however it would best help their reading initiative at their school.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, have bought an additional teacher or 2 with lowest 300 funds.
Yeah.
Some have bought curriculum, so we give them the pot of money, and they get with Laura and tell Laura how they want to spend it and go from there.
Yeah, and along those lines, I know that we have some more of those, that I did get an email with our critical need schools that are in danger of not making, and I don't know if if it would be a workshop. I know financially it would impact us.
We set aside, if you'll look on the sheet the last thing I gave you, which is the general fund broken out.
Yeah.
If you'll go all the way, I think it's the last page that talks about the district initiatives.
Right.
It's not a lot of money.
Hold it up.
But we set aside, okay, let me.
very last page.
I know, but I don't remember what.
It's
Oh,
this
this
one,
packet.
it's the Excel handout of the
Okay.
general fund. And if you go to the last page under district-wide initiatives,
Yeah.
you'll see where we set aside $250,000, and you'll see I've got an asterisk, it says new beside it.
Yeah.
For differentiated accountability for school needs. So that's the schools in DA status where there's additional things that we have to do for those schools.
Yeah.
And I talked to Laura, last year we set aside a much smaller amount. I think we only had, was it 3 schools last year in DA status? But I know we're having more this year, so we've got a project set aside to try to help them out also. Right now, that amount of money is just sitting budgeted in an account strip in a separate project entitled DA.
Okay.
But it's in my cost center until Laura tells me what to do with it.
And same with that
How much to give to each school and how they can use it and everything.
that would be in line with the District 1 initiatives for Title I, the 300,000. Is that out of district?
That is the
General
one that I
fund?
just talked about with House Bill 7069,
Right.
where they have the 8% administrative cap.
Gotcha.
And we're going to receive over $300,000 of indirect funds from Title I for, there's different things that indirect can be used for. It comes into the general fund,
Mm-hmm.
and to try to help Title I out this year because of that cap, we set their indirect aside in order to help them out.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. And that might be, I don't know if it's something we could ask, or I would definitely like to see a workshop about these schools that, you know, that the 7069, because there's some real, I know I've seen, read,
I should know, but I don't.
Differentiated accountability.
Okay.
but I know that I've read in the paper.
District assessment, if you're talking about the D18.
No, I'm talking about schools that are at risk of being.
Well, right now, we have 2 that could close next year, honestly, or a
Based on
district.
school grades.
Yeah, or a charter will take them over, 2. So it's like,
And along with
Two
that,
of ours?
to answer your question, there are some requirements that we have, some requirements and some strong suggestions on partnerships and that type of thing that we will have to, we're actually
Right.
working on that now.
yeah.
But those schools are gonna have some additional costs involved. like you
Right,
said.
and that's
Well,
kind of what
we
I
need
didn't
to.
know, if they're already been worked in, have we scheduled a workshop for the board to be involved, the financial support? I mean, if you
And
have,
it may be that way more than that's needed, I don't know, but I did what I could with the
So we can
reserve
definitely
when
set up
Laura
a
talked
workshop
to
maybe
me.
at a later date.
Yeah.
We're waiting to get our tops plan approved, at the end of this month.
And
I
that
was gonna
is-
say it's
So maybe-
July 31st, is that,
Right.
and I kind of wanted to see that, is that something the board could, that
They-
TOPS
they-
plan,
they
I got
never
the,
let the board look at the top plan.
I was
Not kidding,
teasing
Nikki.
you.
Obviously, it's public record.
yeah,
You
no,
look
no,
at it.
no, it's just something that when we're in danger, like this whole process, if you don't involve us from step 1 and we're closing 2 schools next year, then there's serious, we're the ones that are gonna get
Let me just say, I went to the
killed
state
about it.
board
That's right.
meeting, last week, and they had 3 schools they met about, and 2 of the 3 schools' plans were not approved.
Oh, wow.
And, one of those schools, which is my alma mater, may be in danger of being closed, so
Yeah, that's
they don't
what's-
play, yeah.
That scares me.
Hawthorne High?
Maybe.
it's
They're-
very
they're
serious.
trying
The
to
reason
go
the
through it.
state, the reason the state doesn't take them over is they're not sure they can make a difference either, so.
Right.
They're gonna
I
let a
mean-
charter come in,
Well,
a
the charter-
for-profit charter.
There's no guarantee that that's gonna work either.
No, but
When
they'll
you have
do
a
it.
disproportionate amount of students who don't receive prenatal care before they're born, and they don't have any pre-K and things like that.
They don't care.
I mean,
All I'm
it's what
saying
we
is
deal
that
with.
I feel like as an initiative right off the bat, the board, if we're not
Involved.
I
involved
agree.
with very
We
step
have to know
one.
what's going on, because we get flooded with the phone calls, and we're
Well, and it's
politicians
just only
too.
right that we know what's going on.
Would y'all, you wanna
We
think
are,
about
we're
when you want that
politicians, too.
workshop and maybe at the next board meeting? just
Well, after the
request it?
top stuff, maybe, yeah.
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 I know it was due July 31st. Do they give you a timeline when they tell you or no?
He said he'd give us feedback right away, because we may end up having to go to the state board in September.
And we had to do it for 4 schools or 6 of that TOPS. I looked at that
What does
report,
TOP
but
stand for?
I think 4, and
Okay,
again,
I think it is
Laura
4.
can, correct me, but at least
Yeah,
4.
I mean,
What
Yeah,
I've
I
seen.
I
need
don't
to
know
be
enough
involved.
about it
Yeah,
to.
from what I've seen,
even
you
know what
guys are on
TOPS
top
stands
of it.
for.
You've already transferred teachers into the schools that are registered like that, so I'm real pleased with what I've seen, so.
We're off the
yeah, well,
advertise
that's
subject.
true.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I know,
If
sorry.
Charlie were here, he'd
Alright.
say,
Well, it does involve
Jim,
budget.
or
I do
Joe.
want to be involved. I want the workshop as soon as possible
I agree.
because it's
budget
going to
matters.
involve the
Sharon,
budget.
can you set that up for us?
Yes.
After the
My
tops.
suggestion would be, after the first meeting in September, I will not be.
We've got to wait that long?
We need to wait till school's in session.
that's next week, that's like 10 days. 11
The first week in
days.
September?
No,
She
he
said September.
No, I know.
July, but the report's due July 31st.
1st and 15th.
This instructional team,
First meeting, we
it's a
have
bad
August
time to try to put on
15th
work.
Maybe August 15th,
Maybe, depending if
Yes.
we
and
schedule
see what the
workshop.
tops reports
Because,
at.
I mean,
Plan on
before
August
we
15th.
approve a final budget and we get a TOPS report back that says we have certain things, we're going to have to relook at it. I don't want to
Yes.
approve a September 1st or
And
4th
then have to
budget
go
till we
back
have
and
this
amend it,
workshop. And I
I
mean,
agree with you.
the more we're proactive about this.
We'll get
Good.
things worked out.
Thank you.
Good,
We can
Nikki.
set one up for, August 15th, if things come in.
Okay.
Yeah, because the final budget
Rhonda,
hearing
you
is
have-
September 5th.
Yeah,
Last
September
Stuff you
5th.
wanted to share with us?
I do, I know there's been some questions about the retiree life insurance and everything, so
yeah.
I'm gonna pass out some information to you all.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Um,
Yeah,
I
I
think
I
adjourn.
think we're adjourned from the,